this conversation, I'd like to bring up on stage Rishabh Gulati, the managing editor of NewsX. Can I have Rishabh on stage? Rishabh, the dais is yours. Mr. Naidu is joining us live. Rishabh.
Niranjan, thank you. Chandrababu Naidu ji, welcome to the first National Broadcasting Federation's first conclave, sir. It's a pleasure to have you on video call with us. Chandrababu ji, in your state, sir, you've just come back where you've been protesting against what you call illegal detention of Pawan Kalyan in a hotel. You face trial and tribulations. You can argue that your security taken away, searched at airport, harassment. Your opponent in Andhra Pradesh can also argue that he's faced trials and tribulations, cases, imprisonment, arrest. What is to blame, sir? Is politics to blame for all of this, or is the media to blame for all of this?
No, respected Rishad and friends who are all there, and also Arnab Goswami, editor Republic TV, and Niranjan, and friends, ladies and gentlemen. This is a unique opportunity for people like us to express our views. This National Broadcasters Federation is organizing National Conclave. Especially, they have given me a subject, media and opposition, what is happening in Andhra Pradesh. I am very happy to express some of my views for you.
Go ahead, sir, we can hear you.
Always, media is very, very crucial. Yeah, there is some resound, that's why. Okay.
So you're not able to
Resound.
There
Because
might be
of
an echo,
this,
sir, but we can hear you just fine. You can carry on. We'll try to get that echo fixed. You please carry on, sir.
Yeah, okay, thank you. In democracy, always there are four pillars. One is legislature, executive, judiciary, and media. In democracy, always opposition parties or political parties are playing different roles, especially opposition, other political parties. This is how democracy has to function smoothly. Everybody should have freedom to express and communicate and expose the public issues. Especially media and opposition has to work together. In history, if you see, media played so many times very, very vital role in exposing corruption. Even opposition parties always will collect information and will expose in assembly and outside all platforms. That reports, media will take it up. Condition bad to worse. If you see here, there is a reverse. One is media is not giving adequate space for opposition parties in different levels. It may be national level or state level, all these things. Even other issue, if you see here, governments are giving so much of money for advertisements. Thereby, they wanted to carry only positive news and no opposition party news. This is another very, very bad trends are going on. As a matter of fact, I was in opposition for the last 3.5 years. Earlier also I was in opposition for 10 years. We were in ruling 22 years, but 19 years we are in opposition. But first time we are seeing this type of governance or political party which is totally snubbing all political parties and also opposition party especially. They brought one GO 2430. If you see here, this GO is very clear. powers to department HODs to file cases on media through GO number 2430. After careful examination of the matter, Government hereby accord permission to delegate powers to the secretaries of respective departments to issue rejoinders, file complaints and lodge appropriate cases, if need be, through public prosecutor against defamatory news items published, telecast, posted in print, electronic, social media, pertaining to their respective departments after following due powers of law. What I am saying,
it's the politicians to blame. It's the governance that puts media also under threat, and it's the politicians fighting amongst themselves. Why is the media to blame in here, sir?
No, I am not blaming media. There is manipulation for media. That is one step. Those who are writing, they are blackmailing them, this type of GO, and no reporter is able to write. Is it democracy? That is what I wanted to highlight. Even so-called your press council or Broadcasters Federation or Editors Guild, nobody is able to fight. That is the pity. That is what I wanted to highlight. One is this issue.
How can podiums
we are
like
moving in a big way for the 75 years.
How can federations better representing the regional press? And there is a specific
That's
other
what I'm
example
saying.
that has been raised, where a lot of the regional press sometimes is owned by political parties. How can that fair voice be represented then, sir?
That is what I am asking you. Some political parties are having media. Added to that, those who are independently acting, they are putting this type of blackmailing tactics and also facing booking cases against them. How can they act? Finally, what is happening, opposition role or communication has become practically very difficult. One example I am telling you. Recently in Visakhapatnam, Pavan Kalyan, Janasena president, he wanted to visit that place for a program, Janavani. When he landed there, they wanted to put restrictions on him. Then they attacked, and also in turn, he was totally harassed day and day out. Very bad incident. Even political parties are unable to perform. Even media is unable to write. Is it not the responsibility of national media to take it up? That is what I am questioning here.
But
this is where, if you protect democracy,
in power,
then only we can do all these things.
You've been alliance at the center,
Please.
You've ruled the state for more than 20 years, sir. They lobby the media and pressure the media, but sometimes it's convenient for opposition's sake, to say that the media is not with us. The first question I asked you was about Pavan Kalyan. The problem is the politics. The problem is not the media.
No, not the media, but media is snubbing. That is what I wanted to highlight in this platform. It is not only media and opposition. It is media, ruling party, and also opposition parties, all political parties for that matter.
Okay.
That is what I wanted to emphasize here.
You know, you've been
even during my tenure also, you have seen national level.
State, you've been lobbying for farmers in your state. A lot of them have been on tour in Delhi to lobby media houses to cover their cause. When you saw the farmer agitation that was brought to Delhi and the kind of coverage it got, do you feel then frustration that there is a regional disparity, although your cause was different, but the community was the same?
No, what I am saying, even there also not adequate coverage at national media. Sometimes media at a national level, you are giving priority for some issues, but genuine issues. One is Amravati farmers. You are unable to focus. This is what I wanted to emphasize here. This is the historic fight they are doing. Government has given right for them. Court has upheld. They wanted to go for protest, they want to go rally, Padayatra. Even Padayatra, they are unable to do it. Is it a democracy? This is where I am questioning, or I am highlighting this forum.
But
even national media has to take it up.
To whom? So
earlier, if you see, on your own, public issues you have highlighted.
So you are of course hoping we criticize Jagan Reddy and give greater coverage. I'm assuming you're hoping we criticize the national government. But when it comes to the criticism of the opposition, then the media is painted as sold out. How is that fair?
No, I am not saying that. Impartial way in a democracy. Only issue based you have to highlight. That is what I am asking. Media and opposition, that is the role we have to play. I have seen all these things for the last 40 years, not today. Even before economic reforms, after economic reforms. I am watching at national level so many political developments. I am not blaming anybody. But at the same time, this is the platform I want to express my views. We are all working for this great country, to empower this great country, and ultimately everybody should express their views freely. Media has to cover. That is what I want to emphasize.
Chandrababuji, last thoughts and last question to you is, in keeping with what you just said, there is a Team India approach, but oftentimes opposition becomes for the sake of opposition. Is it okay, in your opinion, that when something good happens and when governments do good things, that equally vehemently they should be praised for it, not just finding fault and criticizing?
No, I am very clear. India is a great country. All of us has to remember this. After economic reforms, India is moving very fast. And at the same time, in a knowledge economy, India is playing very vital role. In future, we are going to play more vital role. In knowledge economy, IT is the backbone. That India is very strong. If you see all Indians all over the world, they are doing extremely well. Another 25 years, they are going to do further better. Why I am saying all these things? There is a great time for India if all of us as team work together, irrespective of our political differences. Finally, India will become 100 years Independence Day, either 1 or 2. This is going to happen. Well, for all these things, India is having a demographic advantage. No other country is having. This is where I want to emphasize. Minor differences will be there, but broad principles, how to empower people of India is very important.
Okay.
That is what I wanted to. Never I opposed anything which is good for the nation.
Well, Chandrababu Naidu ji, I know this is not the podium for the political questions on whether you regret leaving the NDA or your prospective conversation with the Jan Sena, so I'm going to leave it at that. Really appreciate you joining us, and thank you so much for waiting and addressing this forum, which is beaming across 40 news channels as we speak. Can we give him a big round of applause, please?
एक ऐसा पहुंचाए आप सब जुड़े आप सबका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. Thank you for that, Chandrababu Naidu ji, and thank you for that, Rishabh. We have a very short address now, a very special address. Speaking to us via this video message will be Mr. Anurag Thakur, India's current Minister of Information and Broadcasting. Mr. Thakur is known for his hardcore stance of national interest above everything else. Anurag Thakur, the Honorable Minister, has repeatedly warned us about the dangers of exaggerated news. And we know Indian media is uniquely placed to present a global template for diverse growth of the media. And though the media in India is served best when it remains free from any government control, it is incumbent upon the government to ensure, at one hand, a level playing field, while at the same time giving space to new age media innovation and entrepreneurship. Addressing this challenge of balancing the delivery of traditional news with maintaining the sanctity of information disseminated via new and upcoming media, Mr. Anurag Thakur will talk about the administrative challenges of his ministry and the various perspectives in Indian media, which is kept in mind as India embraces digitization. An address by the Honorable Minister for Information and Broadcasting.
नमस्कार. न्यूज़ ब्रॉडकास्टर्स फेडरेशन के सभी सदस्यों को मेरी ओर से दीपावली की, धनतेरस की बहुत बहुत बधाई, शुभकामनाएं. 55 से ज़्यादा सदस्य, और चाहे रीजनल हो या नेशनल हो, एक बहुत बड़ी भूमिका देश में निभा रहे हैं. और किसी भी लोकतंत्र के लिए वहाँ का मीडिया एक बहुत बड़ा एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म होता है जहां से सही खबर सही समय पर जन जन तक पहुंचाने का काम किया जाता है। और जैसा मैं जानता हूं, न्यूज़ ब्रॉडकास्टर्स फेडरेशन ने न केवल खबर पहुंचाने का काम किया है, आपके सदस्यों ने जन जन तक सही खबर भी सही समय तक पहुंचाई है। और आज मैं आप सबको धन्यवाद भी करना चाहता हूं कि आप सब एक प्लेटफॉर्म पर इकट्ठे हुए हैं और इस लोकतंत्र को और मजबूत करने में मदद करेंगे। जन योजनाएं जो हैं हमारी, जनता के लाभ के लिए उनको आप जन जन तक पहुंचाते हैं। और यही नहीं, जहां पर चुनौतियां हैं, जहां पर सरकार को घेरने का काम है या जगाने का काम है, आप वहां भी पीछे नहीं रहते। एक सजग प्रहरी के रूप में आप लोग काम कर रहे हैं, मैं इसके लिए आपको बधाई देता हूं। मैं क्षमा चाहता हूं, मैं व्यक्तिगत रूप से नहीं रह पाया। मैंने अर्नब गोस्वामी जी से कहा था कि मैं आपके सभी सदस्यों से मिलना चाहूंगा, लेकिन हिमाचल में चुनाव है और आज नामांकन में मुझे 5 स्थानों पर रहना था, मैं नहीं आ पाया। लेकिन जब भी आपकी भविष्य में बैठक होगी, मैं उसका हिस्सा बनना चाहूंगा। 2 बातें मैं यहां पर रखना चाहता हूं कि इन्फोडेमिक, ये पैंडेमिक के समय कहा गया, और ये भारत ने दुनिया भर में एक बड़ी चुनौती के रूप में देखने को मिला कि सही खबर की बजाय एक फैब्रिकेटेड खबर के कारण लोगों की जानें तक चली गई। ये दुष्प्रचार जो है, ये सरकार को ही नहीं, समाज को भी बहुत नुकसान पहुंचाता है। मैं आशा करता हूं आप इन फैब्रिकेटेड और फेक न्यूज पर रोक लगाएंगे, और जैसे पीआईबी फैक्ट चेक करता है कि फर्जी खबर पर हम लोगों को जानकारी भी देते हैं और आगे भी देंगे। अगर फर्जी खबर को आप भी रोक लगाने का प्रयास करेंगे तो अच्छा होगा। मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाता हूं, सरकार की ओर से अगर आपको कुछ भी चाहिए हो, हम वो करने का प्रयास करेंगे। सेवा ब्रॉडकास्ट पोर्टल की अगर मैं बात करूं, अब ऑनलाइन ही आपको सब कुछ जानकारी भी मिलती है, आप एप्लीकेशन भी डाल सकते हैं, आप किसी को दफ्तर आने की जरूरत नहीं। हमने इसको सरल और सुलभ करने का काम किया है। टेक्नोलॉजी पर हमने नए नए कदम उठाए हैं। मैं आपके सुझाव आमंत्रित करता हूं, क्या और बदलाव आप हमारी पॉलिसीज में, नीतियों में देखना चाहते हो? भारत कंटेंट का हब कैसे बने, न्यूज का हब कैसे बने, और भारत जहां अन्य क्षेत्रों में एक लीडर के रूप में उभर रहा है, इस नए भारत में मेरे मीडिया के भाई ब्रॉडकास्टर्स भारत को एक लीडिंग रोल में कैसे ला सकते हैं? कृपया करके आप अपने सुझाव भी दें और आइए इकट्ठे मिलकर भारत को इस क्षेत्र में भी लीडर बनाएं। टेक्नोलॉजी हो, सॉफ्टवेयर हो, प्रेजेंटर हो, न्यूज रिपोर्टर हो, या आपकी तरह मीडिया ऑनर्स हो, आइए भारत को दुनिया के सर्वश्रेष्ठ देशों में न्यूज ब्रॉडकास्टिंग में अव्वल दर्जे पर पहुंचाएं। आप सब जुड़े, आप सबका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। भविष्य में व्यक्तिगत रूप से मिलेंगे भी, तब के लिए शुभकामनाएं। दीपावली की बहुत बहुत बधाई।
On to our next session then, Future of News, News Beyond Luchins. As Indian media positions itself as an equal in the globalized world, it's important to self-reflect, be open to external scrutiny, and ask itself if it is taking all the stakeholders along in the journey. Now, the big question that the media needs to implore is whether or not it has done justice to mirror the aspirations of India beyond the 8 mega metro cities. Now, is there a narrative that caters and echoes the walls of the Lutyens circle, or is it investing in the editorial beyond the big cities of the country?
Absolutely, that certainly is the big question that we must ask. And it's time for editorials to set agendas. It's time for editorials and editorial teams cutting across the various gamuts of the media to invest in editorials beyond big cities. It's time for them to serve the news for the viewer at large, wherever they may be. Reimagining news is the need of the hour, with a pan-India view on issues that make a difference to the public at large. That certainly is the need of the hour, Krishna. And to discuss this, we do have a very, very special panel with us today.
Absolutely.
In fact, I will request our teams to also bring Rajya Sabha Member of Parliament and BJP senior leader who has arrived. Let's quickly try and bring him also into our main hall over here, Sudhanshu Trivedi ji. We have Rajya Sabha Member of Parliament and senior leader of the BJP, Sudhanshu Trivedi ji, joining us for this special session. We also have Samajwadi Party National Spokesperson Ghanshyam Tiwari, live with us today at the NBF National Conclave, themed Future of News. We also have, in fact, CPI senior leader Atul Anjan with us as well. Today we're privileged to have three very, very experienced politicians, three very, very experienced and erudite speakers from three different political parties, of course. And moderating this session will be Zarir Hussain of News Live. And of course, remember, it certainly is going to be a very, very interesting and important session. Let's first, though, before we hear the live conversation on Future of News, News Beyond Lutyens, play out an AV on the theme of the session.
It is time to look beyond the confines of the national capital. It is time to recognize the India story is scripted beyond just Delhi. It is time for an appraisal. It is time for news broadcasters to look beyond investing in big cities. Has the news media got its focus right? Is it time to move on and reimagine news coverage from a pan-India lens? Discussing this and much more at the NBF National Conclave is an esteemed panel on the theme Future of News, News Beyond Lutyens.
Let's welcome them with a loud round of applause. Let's please have on stage now Rajya Sabha Member of Parliament and Senior Leader of the BJP, Sudhanshu Trivedi ji. Dr. Trivedi, please come on to the stage. We also request SP National Spokesperson Ghanshyam Tiwari to join us.
As well. Please come on stage, sir.
Atul Anjan, Senior Leader of the CPI, could we please also have you on stage? And the moderator is also with us, Mr. Hussain of News Live. Let's get you on stage as well, sir. And we are, of course, going to hand over the floor to Mr. Hussain.
And the rest of the gentlemen as well.
Yes. Over to you. Let's take this conversation forward.
A very good evening to all of you. That has been always the grouse that news beyond Lutyens. That has been always the grouse from, say, people in the east, northeast, and down south. And I think in this just about an hour back, it has already been deliberated at length. Assam Chief Minister Dr. Himanta Biswa Sarma has clearly spelled out how the media, Lutyens media, has seen the Northeast or has covered the Northeast. And a little while back, Y.S. Sharmila has expressed her anger and dismay that her 2,000-odd Padyatra has not been covered well. I would like to ask, before that, just one small thing that a friend of mine told me. He's a software engineer working in one of the top MNCs in Bangalore, and in their cafeteria, there were 3 television news channels on display. 2 were in English and 1 in Kannada. And in all those channels, there were Mumbai floods being shown. He said that I've got full sympathy, and I really, sympathize with the people out there that are facing the hardships. But he asked me, we face about a month of floods in Assam every year, annual feature. But why don't we get the coverage? As a journalist, he had asked me. And honestly speaking, I didn't have much answer to that. So I'm looking for an answer, and as our friends out there said that there has to be some agenda set by the Lutyens media. The media editorial decisions has to be made. So let me begin by asking Mr. Ghanshyam Tiwari, a young politician. You have taken part in a lot of debates. But I'm very curious to know, have you ever taken part in any discussion related to Northeast, or just because I come from Assam? So I'm very interested to know, have you ever taken part as a national spokesperson in some discussion in a mainstream media on the Northeast?
Good evening, friends. Thank you so much for NBF, its organizers, Arnab, and other esteemed members of NBF team for inviting us here. And let me start by paying my prayers to the late Netaji. There is a prayer that is held across Uttar Pradesh for his departed soul. As far as your question is concerned, I think let's talk from the moment right now. In 2022, this is in the last 6 years of my being on television, I have participated in the least number of debates. And the reason is that I very vocally told people who would invite, people who invite guest coordinators here, that I don't participate in Hindu-Muslim debates. That reduces 70% of debates that happen on television channel. I don't participate in debates ki Modi ji mahan hai. That reduces another 20% of debates on Indian national television channels. And then the remaining 10% of debates that exist, you can define whether they represent Northeast or whether they represent Tamil Nadu, whether they represent Andhra Pradesh, Telangana. My father served Air Force. I grew up traveling across the country, largely living in southern states. And even the Doordarshan at that time would cover the entire nation. The CSDS has today released the survey of who are the viewers of various news channels. It is absolutely clear and that in this version of news is a business. It's a business where advertisement is played out. You have to ask who the advertiser is. You will play out an advertisement as per your viewers. If more than 50% of viewers of a channel, as per CSDS Lok Niti survey, are of one leaning, then you advertise products for that leaning. Now the question is, what is getting advertised? As I said, 70% Hindu-Muslim debates. Who wants to advertise Hindu-Muslim debates? There's no journalist here who will say that prior to 2014, every week they will do 3 or 4 Hindu-Muslim debates. What happened? That after 2014, they are forced to do every week 3 or 4 Hindu-Muslim debates. So if the advertisement becomes the idea of conflict in society, the advertisement becomes not the price of milk in Delhi or the fact that in an exam, you tell me, sir, if a government organizes the exam, and 100 students apply for it, what is failure? If 40 students do not even reach exam centers. In Uttar Pradesh, when the media played its usual agenda, 36 lakh students applied for an exam. In a government, we are talking about Modi ji giving some job bonanza. 36 lakh people. Do you know how many people did not reach the center? More than 16 lakh people did not reach the center. So we don't know what the agenda is, but we know who the advertiser is. And for that, I have brought the newspaper. This is Indian Express, one of the more centered newspapers. Look at the Indian Express. The one that fell right now is economy, by the way. That's how limited the economy is. This is the first page of Indian Express. So when news platforms become businesses that advertise, you must ask who the advertiser is, and that will tell you what the news is going to be. Thank you.
Sudhanshu Trivedi ji, I remember Mizoram Chief Minister Zoramthanga, he very articulately described saying that New Delhi only listens to the sound of bullets because at that time insurgency was at its peak. But now with insurgency on the downslide, things are a little bit looking up. But let me ask you, do you agree to the fact that the more we are away from, the farthest from Delhi, the coverage in terms of the media coverage gets lesser? That's what Y.S. Sharmila a few minutes back had complained. So do you agree to that fact that Delhi mainstream media cannot see beyond Delhi in terms of news coverage?
Actually, the problem with Lutyens zone was not geographical distancing. It was a consistent distancing from the soul of India.
Mindset?
I'm just telling you. If there is something in Northeast happening which is having a potential of having a negative impact on the national consciousness or national integrity of India, then it's a news. And even if Something happening in just 50 kilometers away from Delhi in a village, which is having potential of putting a negative impact on the social fabric of India or the national pride of India, it's a news. But if something positive is happening, it's not a news. That's why I want to put forth a fact. He was asking about the advertisement and funds and others. I would just like to say, now look at the decades 60s, 70s and 80s when Lutyens zone has reached to its zenith. What was the sources? Mitrokin's archive, KGB and the World Part 2. The details are there. Yuri Bachmanev, who was here, a KGB agent who was working here as a journalist, now he has disclosed what was the sources and how at the time the media and those who were considering themselves as an intellectual stalwart. I am not disrespecting anybody, but quote unquote in the words of Yuri Bachmanev, he was saying they were the useful idiots for us. It was his word. Because we were just watching that how useful he can be. For which agenda? He said that he was given an agenda to destroy the Indian culture. Though he subsequently became admirer of that. And that's why, if I want to say 1975 during emergency, I'm not having that type of memory. But hardly Lutyens media was taking any initiative in a movement against emergency. But that created a history. Now, from my memory, late 80s, entire Lutyens media was against BJP and BJP kept on rising. 89 we got 86, बस हो गया, इसके बाद नहीं. 91, 120, अरे बस maximum हो गया, इसके आगे नहीं. 196, 190, हो गया, इसके आगे नहीं. Entire Lutyens media was against Bala Saheb Thackeray in the decade of 90s. He kept on rising. सब कहते रहे बीजेपी की सरकार नहीं बनेगी Lutyens media में. We formed the government. Entire decade of 2000, मोदी जी के खिलाफ. मोदी जी बढ़ते रहे. मोदी जी कभी नहीं आएंगे. आ गए. एक बार हमारा भी साथ दिया था. 2004 इंडिया शाइनिंग और हम नहीं आए. तो नाउ इट इज फॉर लुटियंस मीडिया टू इंट्रोस्पेक्ट कि आपके पास वो कौन सी जादू की छड़ी है कि आप देख ही नहीं पाते हैं या जो आप देखते हैं वो हमेशा गलत ही देखते हैं. दिस इज द बेसिक प्रॉब्लम दैट दे हैव नाउ स्टक इनटू एन एरा व्हिच इज ऑफ pre-2000. So I would like to conclude with a sentence. After we first time got a clear majority on 16th of May 2014, so I am quoting 18th May 2014, London's, which was Guardian, Sunday Guardian of London, because Lutyens media respects the foreign media. Sunday Guardian of London has said that 16th of May 2014 should be considered as a date on which Britishers finally left India. Because from 1947 onwards, in the various systems, thought process, all things were going on mostly, which were the carrier of the British colonial legacy. For the first time, that type of organization has got the power which has no connection with the previous British colonial legacy, and Lutyens zone was nothing but a hangover of the previous British Raj, and when the Raj Path has become Kartavya Path. So I think that Lutyens should try also to relook at their own path.
Atul Janji, a few minutes back, as I have been repeatedly telling, Sharmila ji had also said the same thing. South, then East, Northeast. Sikkim generally comes to the forefront only when there is a Doklam-like standoff. Arunachal Pradesh, Assam Chief Minister has rightly said a few moments ago, saying that only when there is a standoff that the media shows or covers it. But when there are something, the Indian Army does something very good, it's never been projected. So what, according to you, you have been such a seasoned senior politician, you must have seen this or you must have observed this kind of disparity.
देखिए, भारतीय समाज बहुत विविधताओं का समाज है. Sorry, I'm speaking in a language which is known and spoken by the overwhelming majority of this country. And I think the message of this NBF must go to the maximum number of people. So I'm using that you should not take it that I'm very chauvinistic about my Hindi language. But I should also say, don't be very dear to that language, which is an alien language and is spoken by only 3 crore of people of this country. But anyway, जब हम गुस्से में भारतीय आ जाता है तो अंग्रेजी बोलने लगता है। भारतीय जब गुस्से में आता है तब अंग्रेजी में बोलने लगता है। लेकिन समस्या समाज की ये है, समस्या समाज की ये है, भारत के अंदर जितने राज्य हैं उन राज्यों की समस्याओं को भारत का न्यूज़पेपर, भारत के इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया कवर करता है। एक जमाना था जब टीवी नहीं था, कौन जानता था फिजो को, कौन जानता था नागालैंड के आंदोलन को, कौन जानता था आईएम को, कौन जानता था लालडेंगा को? ये प्रिंट मीडिया था। अब आप कह देंगे कि वो बिल्कुल किनारे पर था, नहीं सारे देश जानते थे, वो मीडिया के थ्रू जानते थे और बड़ी एक्सक्लूसिव स्टोरी आती थी। एक जमाना था जब अखबारों को पढ़ते थे लोग, समाचार पत्रों को पहले पेज पर पढ़ते थे, ये क्रिकेट में हो गया, ये हॉकी में हो गया, दुनिया के पैमाने पर ये हो गया, भारत का विकास दर ये हो गया, प्रधानमंत्री ने कहा। आज पहले पेज पर एक अधनंगी लड़की, कहां है महिला वो तमाम कार्यकर्ता, एक अधनंगी लड़की मर्सिडीज के सामने खड़े होकर के प्रचार कर रही है कि 30 लाख रुपए इस वक्त मर्सिडीज पर हमने रिलीफ दे दिया है, आओ लूट लो मर्सिडीज को। कहां है वो लोग? फर्स्ट पेज का वही हाल है, सेकंड पेज का वही हाल है, थर्ड पेज में अद्धा जो छपता है उसका भी हाल है, फोर्थ पेज में न्यूज है कि रणबीर कपूर कटरीना कैफ के घर से निकल गए 4 कॉलम के। तो आप देखिए ना क्या है स्थिति। हम लोग जब राजनीति में, स्टूडेंट पॉलिटिक्स में थे, ये हमारे छोटे भाई की तरह, बहुत स्नेह है मेरा इनके प्रति, दोनों के प्रति। मैं यूनिवर्सिटी स्टूडेंट यूनियन का लखनऊ का प्रेसिडेंट था। मैं एक प्राइमरी के स्कूल से, गांव से पढ़ के आया था, अंग्रेजी नहीं जानता था और अंग्रेजी न जानने की वजह से मैं चेन्नई के रेलवे स्टेशन पर जूतों से पीटा गया था, जूतों से, एक आध बार नहीं कई बार पीटा गया था। सुनीता सत्यार्थी जयपुर विश्वविद्यालय छात्र संघ की अध्यक्ष थी स्टूडेंट यूनियन की, वो हिंदी बोल रही थी, वो पीटी गई थी। वो दौर था कुछ और, वो दौर था कुछ और। फिर मैंने अंग्रेजी सीखने की कोशिश की, मेरे गुरुजनों ने मुझे सिखाया, मेरे परिवार के, मेरे माता पिता ने मुझे सिखाया। लेकिन हम तब पढ़ते थे तो अंग्रेजी का अखबार पढ़ते थे, टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया, तो देखते थे कि इंदर मल्होत्रा ने एडिटोरियल क्या लिखा है, एक्सप्रेस में हृदय हरिमोहन कार्लेकर ने क्या लिखा है, गिरिलाल जैन ने क्या लिखा है, प्रभाष जोशी ने क्या लिखा है, नवभारत टाइम्स में राजेंद्र माथुर ने संपादकीय क्या लिखा है। आज तो संपादकीय पढ़ने की ही जरूरत नहीं है, देयर इज नो एडिटोरियल, देयर इज ए प्रोप्राइटोरियल। पढ़ो प्यारे, प्रोप्राइटर क्या कहता है, प्रोप्राइटर क्या कहता है। ये स्थिति जब आ जाए मीडिया की तो क्या करेंगे आप? महत्वपूर्ण खबर 7वें पेज पर चली गई। अगर हेडलाइंस ना हो टेलीविजन की तो टेलीविजन भी देखने लायक नहीं है। बदलो, बदलो। आप कह रहे हैं लोगों की गरीबी, गुर्बत, बिहार में क्या है और नॉर्थ ईस्ट में पानी आ गया, सिक्किम इतना खूबसूरत ऑर्गेनिक स्टेट है, उसके बारे में कौन लिख रहा है? कुछ नहीं लिख रहा है। बदलो अपनी ज़हनियत को। एनबीएफ ने एक काम किया है, अर्नब जी इस काम को और आगे बढ़ाओ। व्हाट शुड बी द कंटेंट? कंटेंट क्या होना चाहिए? ये पीपल्स ओरिएंटेड कंटेंट होना चाहिए। जनता के सरोकारों का कंटेंट अखबारों में और टेलीविजन के मीडिया में होगी। डेवलपमेंटल स्टोरी होगी या प्रधानमंत्री का चेहरा दिखाया जाएगा? लीडर अपोजिशन की भी बात आएगी कि नहीं है? विपक्ष की बात का स्थान तो मिल ही नहीं रहा अखबारों में। विपक्ष क्या कहता है, लगता है भारत में संसदीय लोकतंत्र का विपक्ष गायब हो चुका है। सरकार चाहती है कि नहीं चाहती है मुझे नहीं मालूम, समाचार पत्र और तमाम लोग तो यही चाहते हैं। सिर्फ मैं एक बात कह करके अपनी बात खत्म करता हूं। बहुत लंबी बात कहने से पहले एक आध शेर कह देने से सारी बात कवर हो जाती है। मशहूर शायरा मीना कुमारी एक बहुत अच्छी अदाकारा भी थी और शायरा भी थी। गुलजार साहब ने उनकी पूरी शायरी को एक डायरी में प्रिंट किया है। उसमें एक जगह लिखा है उन्होंने, मीना कुमारी ने, कि मसर्रत पे रवाजों का सख्त पहरा है। आपके रवाज के लिए, आपके रवाज के लिए मीडिया, मसर्रत पे रवाजों का सख्त पहरा है। और गरीब आदमी आपको पढ़ता है तो क्या कहता है? मसर्रत के पर आवाज़ों का सख्त पहरा है, न जाने कौन सी उम्मीद पर दिल ठहरा है। और मेरे जैसे लोग ये कहते हैं कि तेरी आंखों में झलकते गम की कसम, ऐ दोस्त दर्द का रिश्ता बहुत गहरा है। इसको समझेगा जिस दिन मीडिया काम बन जाए।
That was Atul Ajat ji in his inimitable style. He had mentioned one very interesting thing, and which I would like to endorse, that this platform has given us, editors like us, a chance to, this is a bridge kind of a thing between the mainstream and the regional media. So thanks very much to Arnav
Can
for
I add one
floating
thing?
this.
What he has said? अब इन्होंने एक शेर कहा है, तो लुटियन जोन वाले जिस जुस्तजू में अपने दौर में चलते रहे, उनको भी मैं एक शेर में कहना चाहूंगा कि कश्ती भी नहीं बदली, दरिया भी नहीं बदला, पर इन डूबने वालों का जज्बा भी नहीं बदला। है शौक सफर ऐसा, एक उम्र हुई हमने, मंजिल भी नहीं पाई, रास्ता भी नहीं बदला।
Wow, wow. Again, like, you know, this is turning out to be a shairi kind of a session. But
And
then,
one more thing,
yes.
on the issue of representation of the opposition, sir. Now we are sitting in this era. 2/3 is the representation on
Yes.
media is of the opposition. Never was when prior to 1998, when BJP first time came in power. और एक दौर तो ऐसा आया था जब पूरी तरीके से मीडिया को रौंद दिया गया था। अब जब आपने कहा तो सबसे बड़े शायर हुए गालिब, उसके बाद हुए शेख मोहम्मद इब्राहिम ज़ौक, और इसके अलावा साहिल लुधियानवी। तो उस जमाने में तो आपको ध्यान होगा, आप लोगों की तो युवावस्था की बात है, हम लोग होश संभालने से पहले की बात, क्या कहा जाता था इमरजेंसी के बारे में, ऐसा कंट्रोल कर लिया गया कि अब तो गालिब, ज़ौक, साहिर, मीर सरकारी और शायरी की हो गई तासीर सरकारी। यानी सरकारी तासीर में लिखना पड़ता था। और आज प्रधानमंत्री जी को आलोचना छोड़िए, कटु आलोचना छोड़िए, घटिया से घटिया शब्दों का प्रयोग करके, मौत की कामना करके, मौत का प्रकार बताकर यह कहा जाता है अभिव्यक्ति की स्वतंत्रता नहीं है। तो मेरे विचार से those who are trying to project these type of narrative from the Lutean zone should again try to introspect. That's why they are unable to understand exactly the place where they are standing.
Yeah.
I think one point I just want to mention it here. In 1975, when the emergency was imposed, ये हिंदुस्तान में ही था, भारत में ही था संभव, जब तमाम अखबारों ने एडिटोरियल्स ब्लैंक कर दिए थे। भूल जाते हैं आप? विरोध का क्षण उस वक्त भी हिंदुस्तान के पत्रकारों में था। निखिल चक्रवर्ती, हिरण्मय कालेलकर, इंडियन एक्सप्रेस, रामनाथ गोयनका, टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया, इंदर मल्होत्रा, वो भूल जाते हैं। प्रतिरोध की शक्ति तब थी, लेकिन आज हो तुमको जो पसंद वही बात कहेंगे, तुम दिन को रात कहो, रात कहेंगे।
I think it is important that this term Lutein media is reflected upon in the light of what happened in the most terrible years that India has faced in the last 3 years, especially COVID. How did Lutein, or whatever you call, I prefer the call somebody made, that lumpet media. How was it covered? Who told that Tablighi Jamaat was responsible for COVID? How was it covered? When the entire world was fighting that how should governments respond to COVID, we made it a communal virus. Who did it? Can anyone answer? Can anyone appreciate that? Did not minister and spokesperson, Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, participate in that debate? They fanned those discussions. The anchors, whether you call it lumpet, Lutein, whatever you call it, they fanned those debates. Then nobody was ready to talk about the migrants, but we are ready to speak about Riya Chakravarti. Who was distracting the nation in crisis? I believe that Lutein's media and this term is used to distract people. Use of history is a way to distract people because you don't want to tell that India ranks poorly on hunger index. You don't want to acknowledge that youth in India today is unable to find a job. You don't want to acknowledge that today people are taking away their children from private schools because they are not able to pay fees. When the news become focused on what the advertisers want the nation to hear, the responsibility, just like the luminaries that were talked about, the responsibility of the news goes back to the citizens. I am very hopeful. I am very hopeful that the youth, a lot of them sitting here, the youth in colleges, even those who are getting used to fake news, they are going to become used to information and will be able to decipher what is real news. Today, it is not the media that is defining the frontier of what reaches the citizens. It is individual students, individual people who read and share among their own social media, their own WhatsApp groups. I believe 10 years down the line, when we speak, these leaders may not be there, but we will see a rise of a new citizenry who's much more informed and who take the responsibility of those editors in 1970s who took the responsibility to keep the nation informed. That new citizenry is what gives me hope. I don't have hope in the media that communalized the virus, in the media that went after Riya Chakravarti, in the media that rejects data in the face of reality, and in the media that chooses only to cover what their advertisers want to be covered.
I think Sudhanshu Trivedi will respond to Ghanshyam Tewari.
Actually, what happened, now the democracy is really taking shape. He's asked a lot of things about what happened previously, but I want to ask, how was the reporting in 1990 Kashmir massacre? What was the reporting here? And what was the tone and tenor of reporting? So I just want to say, India got independence in 47, but real democracy came in 77 when the parties have started changing the government. Otherwise, there was only one party. So democracy started in 77. In 90s, what happened? The entire intellectual establishment and media was controlled by one thought. There is no scope of other. Monopolies and restrictive trade practices. You have heard about that. In 90s, the vernacular media became free from the clutches. And now, the national media is becoming free from the clutches of the monopoly of one thought, one and exclusive copyright of only one set of people. That's why the organizations like NBF are coming. ये और कुछ नहीं है जनाब, जागीरदारी राजे महाराजों की चली गई थी 47 में, तो उनके दिल में भी दर्द हुआ था. जब 77 में इमरजेंसी के बाद सरकार चली गई थी तो भी मोनोपोली खत्म हुई थी. अब वो मोनोपोली खत्म हो रही है, डेमोक्रेसी आ रही है, दूसरे थॉट को भी दीजिए. और मैं इनकी बात से अच्छा मानता हूं, ये तो हार्वर्ड के पढ़े हुए हैं. अब प्रॉब्लम जानते क्या हो गई है? प्रीवियसली आपने अच्छा कहा, एडिटोरियल्स में लिखा जाता था. फिर मैं कह रहा हूं, वो तो एडवर्टोरियल्स होते थे, और वो भी कहां से स्पॉन्सर्ड होते थे. मैं और भी 3-4 किताबें बता दूंगा. अब सब डिटेल में कैसे कैसे क्या क्या लिखवाया जाता था. भारत से ही नहीं, बाहर से भी लिखवाया जाता था. वो सारी बातें तो अपनी जगह, परंतु अब परिस्थिति में बदलाव आया है. टेक्नोलॉजी ने मार दिया है साहब. अब तो सबके हाथ में मोबाइल है. इफ एनीबडी वांट्स टू वेरीफाई एनी फैक्ट, I can say even by using internet, at least up to 90% he or she can reach to the truth. अब बड़ा मुश्किल है इस बात को कंट्रोल करना. फॉर एग्जाम्पल 2014 से पहले बाबा साहब अंबेडकर की बुक थॉट्स ऑन पाकिस्तान वॉज वर्चुअली आउट ऑफ इंटायर अंबेडकर साहित्य. आपको मिलती नहीं कहीं, यहां खूब खोज डालते नहीं मिलती. To accept that their era has gone, like राजे रजवाड़ों का एरा 47 में गया था, 75 साल के बाद इनका एरा जा रहा है, जिसे वो एक्सेप्ट करने को तैयार नहीं है. इसलिए ओपन माइंडेड होकर. और लास्ट में आपने बात कही कि कंट्री के डेवलपमेंट और इसकी बात डिस्कस होती है, तो मैं पूछना चाहता हूं, अगर हम 5th लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी बने, अभी IMF की रिपोर्ट के अनुसार हम 6.1% ग्रोथ, बहुत ज्यादा नहीं है, बट हाईएस्ट अमंग ऑल मेजर इकोनॉमीज ऑफ द वर्ल्ड. वही CMI का डाटा जिसको 2 महीने पहले कोट करके कहते थे कि साहब हमारी जो बेरोजगारी है वो मैक्सिमम है 8.4%. दैट सेम CMI has said in the month of September it has come to 6.4%. and I want to say, n number of debates you have seen. 50 साल की सबसे बड़ी बेरोजगारी, 50 साल की सबसे बुरी अर्थव्यवस्था, 50 साल का सब कुछ. यू हैव हर्ड दिस फेज. अगर ये जमाना नहीं होता तो ये 50 साल लोगों को सच लगता. अब भूल गए लोग, एनीबडी कैन चेक 1991 डिवैल्यूएशन ऑफ द रूपी, सोना गिरवी, फॉरेन एक्सचेंज इज वर्थ लेस देन 1%, बेरोजगारी की दर 14%, सॉरी रेट ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन 14%, और जाने क्या क्या 2% ग्रोथ रेट रहती थी, सब कुछ रहता था. एनीथिंग कैन बी चेक्ड. सो दैट monopolistic control is being diluted and the democratic forces emerging in the field of media, which is becoming a difficult thing to digest, who are considering their feudal fiefdom feeling of controlling the intellectual establishment of India.
Yeah, just let me put on record, if it will be unfair if I don't put on record. Of late, things are beginning to look up, and most of the television channels are covering East and the Northeast and South. And I think Arnab has done one good thing, is that he has been, since his channel is covering East or Northeast a little bit aggressively, other channels are following suit because they cannot afford to ignore once one channel covers that particular area aggressively. So definitely things are beginning to look up, and one must say that it's a little bit, news is going beyond Lutyens to an extent, but yes, we need to see more. Anjanji, just things have to change, isn't it?
It's very much required. You're talking about the MRTP and other things. In the media, पहले ज़माने में टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया ग्रुप होता था, ट्रिब्यून का ग्रुप होता था, अजीत का ग्रुप होता था, लोकमत ग्रुप हुआ करता था, सकाल ग्रुप हुआ करता था, बिहार का 2 अखबार होता था, लखनऊ के अंदर स्वतंत्र भारत और पायनियर का ग्रुप होता था. आज क्या हो गया टेलीविजन में? एक कंपनी, अर्नब जी, 60 और 65 टेलीविजन चैनल्स को कंट्रोल कर रहे हैं. इज इट डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन? एक बाबूजी सभी के मालिक बन गए, दूसरे उसमें आ गए. ये मोनोपोलाइजेशन है ना. और जब मोनोपोलाइजेशन होगा तो खबरें भी मोनोपोलाइज तरीके से आएंगी, उसके अंदर कैरेक्टर नहीं रहेगा. ये एक बड़ा खतरा है. मेरे दोस्त, मेरे छोटे भाई ने डेमोक्रेसी की बात कही. इससे पहले डेमोक्रेसी नहीं थी देश में. हिंदुस्तान में डेमोक्रेसी थी. आज पिछले 10-15 वर्षों से देख रहे हैं कि पार्लियामेंट के सेशंस घटते चले जा रहे हैं. मिनिमम 100 डेज के पार्लियामेंट के सेशन होते थे, असेंबलीज के सेशन होते थे. 3 दिन के अंदर बजट सेशन होके, अभी उत्तर प्रदेश का बजट सेशन, मध्य प्रदेश का बजट सेशन 3 दिन में, राजस्थान का बजट सेशन 3 दिन में खत्म हो गया. देयर इज नो डिबेट. ये डेमोक्रेसी है. इशू वाइज चर्चा नहीं होगी, हेड वाइज चर्चा नहीं होगी कि बाल कल्याण पे कितना खर्च होगा, शिक्षा पर कितना खर्च होगा, स्वास्थ्य पर कितना खर्च होगा, यहां खर्च गलत है इसको घटाइए, वहां बढ़ाइए. ये डेमोक्रेसी है. जवाहरलाल नेहरू का वो शब्द अच्छा नहीं लगता है लोगों को, लेकिन वो सही है. फ्रीडम इज इन पेरिल, डेमोक्रेसी इज इन पेरिल, डिफेंड विथ योर ऑल माइट. आज जरूरत इस बात की है कि जमहूरियत को बचाया जाए. बोलने की आजादी नहीं है, बोलने की आजादी. मैं जिस राज्य से आता हूं, अब बोलने की आजादी नहीं है, प्रदर्शन करने की आजादी नहीं है, घूमने की आजादी नहीं है. घूमिए आप, लेकिन विरोध और प्रतिरोध के एक शब्द सुनने को तैयार नहीं है लोग. ये डेमोक्रेसी है. तो अखबारों की भी, मीडिया की भी डेमोक्रेसी, और मीडिया का भी, जनतंत्र मीडिया की भी आजादी खतरे में है. हम सबको मिलकर के वो एनबीएफ को, इस सवाल पर सभी लोगों को, सुधांशु जी जैसे लोग और घनश्याम तिवारी जैसे लोग, हमारे जैसे लोग और आप जैसे लोग जो आज़ादी का मतलब समझते हैं, किसी पार्टी में हो, ये आज़ादी चली जाएगी तो न बोलने का अधिकार है, न रहने का अधिकार है. इस आज़ादी की हिफाजत के लिए अपने दल में, अपने समाज में, अपनी जगह पर, अपने न्यूज़ चैनल में जो भी स्पेस मिले उसमें अपनी आवाज़ बुलंद करें. यही हमारी राष्ट्रभक्ति है और यही राष्ट्रवाद है.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are running short of time, and we sincerely hope that news will go beyond Delhi, beyond Lutyens, and every region in this country will get their adequate space and share. So I think, like, we'll have to. Sure.
कुछ परिवर्तन हुए होंगे। नहीं, मैं अब याद इसलिए कर रहा हूं कि अब कहने को तो कुछ लोग कह रहे थे कि मतवाले बेकार के थे, चंद्रशेखर आजाद और भगत सिंह को भी गाली देने वाले पैदा हैं, आइए उनके साथ हम भी अपनी आवाज बुलंद करें, हमारे देश की आजादी का संघर्ष नया स्वरूप लेगा। चलिए जिंदाबाद।
वैसे आपने एक अच्छी बात कही, चंद्रशेखर आजाद भगत सिंह जी को टेररिस्ट लिखने वाले कौन थे? यही जेएनयू ब्रांड विपिन चंद्रा अपनी किताब में लिख दिए थे, रेवोल्यूशनरी टेररिस्ट। और जब यदवेंद्र सिंह संधू उनके भतीजे ने इस विषय को उठाया, 2016 में हमने पार्लियामेंट में उठाया, तो जानते क्या जवाब दिए? वो अगले वाले एडिशन में हटा देंगे, वो उस ढंग में नहीं प्रयोग होता था। और वन मोर थिंग ऑन द रिमोट इश्यूज, नॉर्थ ईस्ट में बोडो प्रॉब्लम सॉर्ट आउट हुई, सेटलमेंट हो गया, एमिकेबल सोल्यूशन। देन इवन द बोडो लैंग्वेज इशू हैज बीन आल्सो सेटल्ड। दे हैव आल्सो एग्रीड दैट द बोडो लैंग्वेज विल बी इंप्लीमेंटेड एंड विद द देवनागरी स्क्रिप्ट। किसने अप्रिशिएट किया कि सेटल डाउन हो गया? नहीं। ऑन द कॉन्ट्रेरी, एक दूसरी बात बताऊं, आपने कहा अगर विधानसभा में खड़े होकर कोई कुछ बवाल कर देगा, बहुत हेडलाइन बनेगी, लुटियंस में बड़ा चर्चा का विषय बनेगा। बट इसी देश में मार्च 2006 केरल, बहुत दूर है ना, केरल असेंबली 1998 कोयंबटूर ब्लास्ट के मेन एक्यूज टेररिस्ट अब्दुल नसीर मदनी, जो तमिलनाडु की जेल में था, उसको छोड़ दिया जाए, इसके लिए स्पेशल सेशन ऑफ केरल असेंबली इज ब्रॉट। All 117 MLAs, all Congress, all Communists voted in block in favor of that. No discussion. एक आतंकवादी के पक्ष में प्रस्ताव पारित हो गया। कभी किसी ने चर्चा सुनी है? यही था, कौन सी चीज दबानी है, कौन सी चीज उठानी है, वो मोनोपोली खत्म हो गई। क्योंकि सर उस जमाने में सबका मालिक एक था, वो एक ही तय करता था दिल्ली में बैठकर कि क्या छपना है। क्योंकि उस दौर में एक और भी अच्छाई थी, वो रिपोर्टर जाता था, डेस्क पे जाता था, डेस्क से एडिटर पे जाता था, रात में अखबार छपता था, सुबह डिस्ट्रीब्यूट होता था, 12-14 घंटे का वक्त होता था सरकार के पास। और ऐसे भी जर्नलिस्ट रहे जिन्होंने खुद लिखा, खुशवंत सिंह जी जैसे लोग, जिन्होंने कहा कि मेरे ऊपर मुझे सरकार ने, मैंने उनको ये इस चीज में सपोर्ट किया तो मुझे हिंदुस्तान टाइम्स का एडिटर बनाया, मुझे राज्यसभा दी। ये तो ओपनली उन्होंने लिखा हुआ है भाई। और इसलिए आज के जमाने में मौका ही नहीं है, 12 सेकंड में तो न्यूज यहां की वहां चली जाती है। तो अब जो भी आप जिसको भी मालिक कह लें, आज मालिक कोई नहीं, आज मालिक जनता है और मालिक टेक्नोलॉजी।
मैं तो समझता हूं कि 1 मिनट, कई मुख्यमंत्री लोग अपने ऊपर 40-40 मुकदमे हैं, मुख्यमंत्री बन जाएं, सीरियस मुकदमे हैं, हम अपने आप अपने मुकदमे वापस ले लें। ये भी यही है जनतंत्र में, ये भी यही जनतंत्र में होता है। रेवोल्यूशनरी टेररिस्ट जब लाला लाजपत राय को मार दिया इंपीरियलिस्टों ने, तो कहा यस, HSRA के डॉक्यूमेंट पढ़िए, उन्होंने कहा यस। इसलिए मैं कह रहा हूं कि मेरे पिताजी भी 18 साल उस मूवमेंट में HSRA के जेल में रहे। उन्होंने अपने को कहा यस, वी आर रेवोल्यूशनरी टेररिस्ट, वी आर रेवोल्यूशनरी। छोड़िए उन बातों को, अब क्या होगा क्या नहीं होगा, आज की बात करो, इसकी बात करना छोड़िए। बहस इस बात की नहीं है, बहस इस बात की है कि बिल्ली काली है या सफेद है, इस पर बहस मत करो। बिल्ली चूहा खाती है कि नहीं खाती है, ये सवाल।
वैसे एक बात कह दूं,
और मैं आपसे कहूं 22 करोड़ लोगों ने, 22 करोड़ नौजवानों ने, अभी पार्लियामेंट में जवाब हुआ, अखबारों में नहीं छपा, 22 करोड़ लोगों ने 1,64,000 नौकरियों के लिए अप्लाई किया, कहीं अखबार में नहीं छपा। संसद में केंद्रीय मंत्री जितेंद्र सिंह ने जवाब लिखते हुए कहा कि 1,64,000 नौकरियों के लिए 22 करोड़ नौजवानों ने अप्लाई किया था। छोड़िए,
तो सर 40 IAS की नौकरियों के लिए 5 लाख हर साल अप्लाई करते हैं।
छोड़िए, जाने दीजिए सबको।
देखिए इसी एक लाइन में अच्छे लोग हर पार्टी में होते हैं। अतुल अंजान जी के पिताजी फ्रीडम फाइटर थे, ही इज फ्रॉम ए फ्रीडम फाइटर फैमिली होते हैं। सोमनाथ चटर्जी इनकी पार्टी के नेता थे, उनके पिताजी हिंदू महासभा में थे अब कई बार क्या होता है, व्यक्ति भटक कर गलत रास्ते पे चला जाता तो भी उसकी अच्छाई नहीं खत्म होती है, अच्छे संस्कार दिखते हैं और यह विचार अभी भी ठीक है।
सावरकर जी 1910 के पहले अच्छे थे, बाद में बदल गए। अच्छी बात है।
वैसे 1910 में कांग्रेस का अध्यक्ष कौन था जब सावरकर को सजा हुई थी? विलियम वैडनबर्न, ब्रिटिश सरकार का सेक्रेटरी।
सावरकर जी ने तो कहा था गौमांस खाना बहुत अच्छा है।
Thank you very much, Atul Ranjan ji, Sudhanshu Trivedi ji, Ghanshyam Tiwari.
Thank you,
Thank you
Sarita.
so much. Very gripping kind of an analysis and observation. Thank you once again for this wonderful discussion.
Thank you, Atul Ranjan. Thank you, Mr. Trivedi, and thank you, Ghanshyam. On to our next panel now. We have two very special guests. Narrative setting from a position of strength in the world, which enables the news consumer to access global news media like never before, is as ever challenging issue. Now, India is often painted with racist almost and typecasted views in the global news media. And for a country with an aim to be a global superpower and making leaps and bounds in every industry, it's time for India to set its record straight and no longer be burdened by a stereotyped view of India. We have a very special conversation now with two erudite speakers on this discussion. Mr. Kanchan Gupta, Senior Advisor for the Minister of Information and Broadcasting, and Mr. Pawan Verma, former diplomat, author, columnist. We have Sandeep Unnithan moderating this session. Sandeep, over to you.
Thank you, Niranjan. More than 30 of the world's biggest media companies are in Europe or in the United States, except for two each in Japan and China. Now they boast of market capitalizations of trillions of dollars, they have revenues of billions of dollars, and they command global attention and help shape world opinion. Now the Nigerian author Chinua Achebe famously said, and I quote, "Until the lions have their own storytellers, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter." Are Indian news consumers hearing the lion's story, or are they still being told the history of the hunt? Joining me to discuss the Indian narrative today is my very distinguished panel. Mr. Verma, you wrote recently how the Nobel Prizes are distinctly Eurocentric, and the fact that the greatest messiah of non-violence ever, Mahatma Gandhi, was never awarded the Nobel Prize. But Dr. Henry Kissinger, who is known for anything but non-violence, got the prize. How does a civilizational state like India deal with this so-called Western objectivity?
Thank you, Sandeep. You cannot deal with this Western subjectivity unless you begin to reappropriate your own sense of culture, history and civilization. And I've said this often, that the success of colonialism is not your physical subjugation only. In fact, that is more easily removed. The success of colonialism is the colonization of your mind. And that takes much longer to erase. It can take decades after political independence. So, therefore, I've written extensively on this subject. I have a book called Becoming Indian, The Unfinished Revolution of Culture and Identity. And I also discuss this in my latest book, The Great Hindu Civilization. That we need to become more confident in our own roots and in a real knowledge of our civilizational legacy, without looking so eagerly for either endorsements from the West, which produce in us either excessive criticism or unnecessary adulation, and learn to make our own decisions objectively.
Mr. Gupta, how does India reappropriate its narrative? How do you define the Indian narrative? You agree with what Verma ji just said?
There is no one single Indian narrative. you have to look at what's the domineering or dominating issue of the day. And the Indian narrative obviously also has to accordingly reshape itself and move forward. I am personally against straitjacketing the Indian narrative into one particular story or storyline. That's what has been done till now. Now, Pawan mentioned about the colonization of the Indian mind, which is true. And one particular book of Pawan's, I have sort of reviewed a few of his books. One particular book, I'm now forgetting the one. Was it The Indian Middle Class or which one? Being Indian, neither of the two. And where he addresses this question of how the Indian mind is colonized. And, after the departure of the British, after the end of colonial rule around the world, there was this great surge of post-colonial writing. Now, who were the people doing that post-colonial writing? They were academics with the most colonized minds. So their perception of colonization was entirely shaped by a very Eurocentric view. And that's why that decolonization never really happened. In the previous session, we had a fiery communist telling us how revolution is the path forward. But even communism is a colonial import. It is not something which is indigenous to this land. The political ideologies that existed in India were all colonial products or byproducts across the spectrum. So to look at it from a very narrow perspective that this shall be my narrative, maybe that's not the way forward, because that's the way we were. We have to now skillfully create stories around the new India. It is a new country. Look at the demography of the country, the young Indians. Look at the issues that agitate these young Indians. It's the economy. So we have to craft stories around the Indian economy. The IMF has conceded that we are the only glimmer of hope in a very dark scenario. So the point is that you have to pick and choose your story, and you should be in a position to stand up and say, hey, listen, this is my story and you got to hear me out. And to reach that point, you need to be confident, you need to be courageous, you have to have a commitment to India, and you have to have a sense of conviction that this India, this country is now set for bigger things in life.
It's interesting you should mention this, because in a couple of the previous sessions we spoke about how well the Indian economy is doing. We've already overtaken Great Britain, and very soon we are going to be the third largest economy in the world by the end of this decade. So Mr. Verma, do you think that we are still the subject of a lot of stereotyping by the West? I was reminded of that New York Times cartoon, that very racist cartoon when we launched the Mars mission. We achieved the orbit around Mars, and you had this cartoon on the NYT which showed this Indian farmer with a cow knocking at the doors of these elite space clubs. So you think these kind of stereotypes are still prevalent in the West, and it's going to take a while for us to break out of that?
No, some are stereotypes. Some may be too real for us to fully accept. I think we should give up our obsession with the West The time has come to assert our own identity. Now that is a process. If I could ask, and Kanchan, I would be happy for his reaction. See, it's a process. In 1947, there was a strong school which believed that the way forward has to be interpreted in terms of Western modernity. I'm a great admirer, contrary now to some biases, of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. But in a sense, and I've written about this, so I don't need to shy away from stating it publicly, he has written more than once that his impatience about getting rid of the deadwood of the past. He tended to conflate much of the past with superstition and prejudice, rather than understanding that our civilizational legacy has seen peaks of refinement as well, not that it is blemishless, and that there is no point throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So a lot of the history that was written was already tinted by a certain desire to push away from our roots. And that needs to be interrogated, rightly. Again, there was an attempt, and probably well-intentioned, given the background of 1947 and the partition, and our conscious adoption of a multicultural, plural and secular state, of portraying, for instance, the Islamic period of our history in a manner where it almost seemed that the invaders came in a tourist bus and offered some biryani here, and we gave them some laddus, and a Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb built. The truth is, this kind of glossing over historical narratives creates its own backlash. We must accept the extent of damage to the civilizational legacy of this country until then, by the damage to our temples, to artifacts and to centers of learning. I mean, Nalanda burned for 1 year after it was set ablaze. I mean, the Nalanda library, it was so rich with manuscripts. Having said that, now this is where I'm coming to the point where we need the right balance. You have to acknowledge it, but you have not to allow today the acrimonies of the past to be resurfaced with an attempt to correct history by force. You can't do it. You must accept it, move on. South Africa set up the Truth and Reconciliation mission, and it moved on. That is one. The last point I want to make is that recognizing and reappropriating your past should not lead to chauvinism and over-glorification of the past at the cost of other narratives which are equally important in the making of India. So against neglecting that past, and partly I have written my book, The Great Hindu in Civilization, to acknowledge the sheer profundity and exuberance, intellectual celebration of that period of history. But from there, I say it with respect also, but you cannot go to the Dinanath Bhatra school of history, where you say everything that is happening today was happening in our ancient past. Airplanes, advanced surgery, motor cars were flying, and so on and so forth. I mean, don't trivialize history in an attempt to once again reappropriate the richness of its legacy. We need to stop doing that. And that applies equally to correcting the attempt to gloss over history by then the opposite reaction of only focusing on those aspects where everybody is seen as alien except the Hindu mainstream. And I have great respect for the recitation of Hindu civilization, but these are extremes which we must avoid if we want to create a sane, balanced, confident and culturally rooted India.
Do you agree with that, Mr. Gupta? How do you achieve this fine balance that Mr. Verma speaks of?
You know, it's very easy to say just accept and move on. Unfortunately, that never happens. Number one. Number two, let us just wind back to the point where he began. For all his claimed greatness, Jawaharlal Nehru was perhaps the most deracinated leader this country has ever had the misfortune of having. He never could fathom the soul of India, and that is where Gandhi scored over him. Gandhiji realized that the soul of India is deeply spiritual, it is deeply rooted to the soil. And that brought about these distortions in governance, and ultimately those distortions percolate down to academics, the history writing project. Why would I just give a pass to the manner in which history was written and not scrutinize it to expose those who were behind, or the thought processes that were behind the writing of that particularly blotted, concocted history? It's very easy to say that, we have to accept and move on. Why? Why is it that a road in Lutyens, Delhi should have been named after Aurangzeb? Why is it, Pawan just mentioned, the sacking of Nalanda? Why is it that we still have a railway station and a town named after Bakhtiyar? Why is it that I am expected to grin and bear it? Now, these are questions which the multitudes now have begun to ask, and there are no convincing replies. You can't just say, I will not change the name of Bakhtiarpur because that is going to hurt sentiments. My big fat toe. Here was a man who sacked perhaps the world's oldest library and definitely the world's largest library of that time. And that sacking was preceded by a very particularly brutal massacre. And yet, we are reluctant to accept. If you accept, then change. If you don't change, then that means you neither accept nor are you willing to concede that you were wrong. No, but my contention is slightly more than that. When you talk about looking for something as simple as inspirational Indians, why is it that the dispensation which India has had till now never tried to make someone like Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar into an inspirational figure? Because he was a Sanskrit teacher. But look at his social achievements. He is the man who got widow remarriage legalized in this country. He is the man who introduced formal education for women and girls in this country. Now we were never told this story. How many beyond Bengal are aware of these stories? And it's a long list. I just gave you one example.
Or Netaji Subhash.
Or Netaji